Everyone in the lawyer's office thought Marcus Vale had won. He sat beside his glamorous mistress, Vanessa, laughing as he shoved the signed divorce papers across the table and told his quiet wife, Elena, she could leave with whatever dignity she had left. He had already thrown her out of their home, mocked her worn handbag, and bragged that Vanessa's job at Zenith Global, the $80 billion company, proved he was upgrading his life. What Marcus never knew was that Elena was not poor, powerless, or dependent on him. She was the secret billionaire owner of Zenith Global, the very empire where his mistress strutted through the halls, pretending to be untouchable. By sunrise, the humiliation Marcus had enjoyed would become the trap that ruined him. The next morning, traffic froze as a fleet of Rolls Royces rolled up to Zenith's glass headquarters. Out stepped Elena, no tears, no pleading, only a boardroom calm that made executives lower their eyes. She had come to do one thing first, fire Vanessa in front of everyone. What she did next left Marcus begging, exposed, and blacklisted from every door he thought money could open forever, starting with the marriage he had destroyed single-handedly himself. For 7 years, Marcus Vale had believed his wife was ordinary. That was the word he used most often when describing her, though never to her face at first. Ordinary, plain, quiet. The kind of woman who folded laundry while listening to classical music, cooked with her sleeves rolled up, and remembered the birthdays of people who never remembered hers. When they first married, he called those qualities rare. He told his friends Elena was peaceful, unlike the ambitious women he had dated before. He said she was the kind of woman a man could come home to after fighting the world. But the moment Marcus began winning, he started resenting the calm he had once admired. His rise was slow enough to make him impatient and fast enough to make him arrogant. He began as a regional sales director at a luxury property firm, then moved into private investment circles where people wore watches that cost more than homes and spoke about morality like it was a hobby for people who had failed. Marcus learned quickly. He learned how to smile without warmth, promise without meaning, and make every room believe he belonged there. Elena watched him change by degrees. The first year, he stopped asking how her day was. The second year, he started correcting the way she dressed. The third, he told her not to come to certain business dinners because the crowd is different. By the fourth year, he began saying things that landed like tiny cuts. You wouldn't understand. This is above you. You're lucky I don't expect much. Elena never answered those remarks with anger. She studied them, the way she studied board reports, acquisitions, market trends, and fragile companies about to collapse under the weight of bad leadership. Marcus mistook her silence for weakness, because arrogance always hears silence as surrender. What he never understood was that Elena's quiet was not emptiness. It was restraint. Her father, Adrian Morrow, had built Zenith Global from a failing logistics company into an empire that owned ports, energy assets, data centers, medical technology, luxury hotels, and one of the most powerful private investment arms in the world. Before he died, he had given Elena 2 pieces of advice. Never let people love your money before they know your heart. And never reveal power to someone who needs power to respect you. Elena had obeyed both. When she met Marcus, she had been using her mother's surname and working under a modest advisory role in one of Zenith's charitable foundations. She had liked that he didn't know who she was. She had liked that he brought her coffee in paper cups and walked with her through rainy streets without noticing the security detailed 2 cars behind them. Back then, Marcus had seemed hungry but not cruel, ambitious but not heartless. He spoke of wanting to build something meaningful. He said he wanted a family that felt safe. Elena had believed him because there had been a time when Marcus Vale knew how to pretend to be a good man even to himself. Their marriage began with a small ceremony in a private garden. Elena wore a simple ivory dress. Marcus cried when she walked down the aisle. He held both her hands and vowed to honor her in every season. For a while, he did. Then money started orbiting around him, and Marcus mistook the orbit for gravity. Vanessa Cruz entered his life at a Zenith Global investor reception 6 months before the divorce papers were signed. She was a senior branding executive in Zenith's luxury hospitality division, though senior, was generous and mostly self-invented. Vanessa had a talent for appearing closer to power than she actually was. She knew which executives to greet loudly, which assistants to ignore, and which men could be flattered into believing they were more important than they were. Marcus was exactly her kind of man. He had arrived at the reception through one of his property clients, wearing a tuxedo he could barely afford and confidence he had borrowed from other people's admiration. Vanessa spotted him near the champagne wall, laughing too loudly at a joke told by a bored advisor. She liked his face. She liked his watch. Most of all, she liked the way he looked around the room, as if searching for someone to confirm he belonged. So she confirmed it. "You're Marcus Vale, aren't you?" she said, touching his arm like they had known each other for years. "I've heard your name." Marcus turned toward her, already flattered. "Good things, I hope." "Interesting things," Vanessa said, smiling. "Good is usually boring." That was enough. Within weeks, Marcus was staying late for meetings. He began buying new clothes and wearing cologne Elena had never smelled before. His phone never left his hand. When Elena entered a room, he turned the screen down. When she asked if everything was all right, he sighed as if her concern were a burden he had outgrown. Vanessa fed every ugly thought Marcus had been hiding from himself. "She doesn't match your future," Vanessa whispered once, while they sat in her apartment overlooking the city. "You know that, don't you?" Marcus stared out at the lights. "Elena is comfortable." Comfortable is what men choose when they're afraid of wanting more. He liked that sentence. He repeated it in his mind for days, polishing it into an excuse. Soon he wasn't just cheating. He was rewriting his marriage to make the betrayal feel deserved. Elena became, in his telling, unsupportive because she didn't clap loudly enough for his boasts. She became simple because she didn't brag. She became dependent because she never threw her wealth in his face. She became a burden because he wanted to feel noble for abandoning her. The night he threw her out, rain was sliding down the windows of their home in silver lines. It was the house Elena had quietly purchased through a trust before their wedding, though Marcus had always spoken of it as "my house," because the mortgage papers and property structures bored him, and Elena had never corrected him. Vanessa stood in the foyer wearing a cream coat and a diamond necklace Marcus had charged to a card Elena's household office quietly paid each month. Elena came downstairs with a suitcase Marcus had ordered the housekeeper to pack. "You're really doing this?" Elena asked. Her voice was soft, not because she was weak, but because if she raised it, the pain might sharpen into something uncontrollable. Marcus stood beside Vanessa, chin lifted. "Don't make this dramatic." Vanessa smiled, too late. Elena looked at her once, just once. It was not a glare, it was not even anger. It was a kind of recognition, as if Elena had finally understood exactly what kind of person stood in front of her. Marcus tossed a folder onto the entry table. "The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. Sign them, and we can all move on." "Elena," Vanessa said, syrupy and cruel, "I'm sure you'll be fine. Women like you are survivors." Marcus laughed. That laugh was the thing Elena remembered later. Not the suitcase, not the rain, not even the humiliation of standing in the doorway of her own home while her husband's mistress looked around like she was choosing curtains. The laugh stayed. Elena picked up the suitcase handle. "You should read everything carefully before tomorrow." Marcus rolled his eyes. "I have lawyers for that." "Yes," Elena said, "you do." She stepped into the rain without another word. Marcus expected her to call, to beg, to cry, to ask where she should go. Instead, a black sedan pulled up before she reached the gate. A driver stepped out with an umbrella and opened the rear door. Vanessa frowned. "Who is that?" Marcus barely glanced outside. "Probably a rideshare." She's always been dramatic, in quiet ways. But the driver was not from a rideshare. His name was Daniel Cross, and he had been head of Elena's private security for 11 years. He had watched Marcus ignore her at dinners, insult her intelligence, and slowly become the kind of man Daniel had warned her about in the beginning. When Elena slid into the back seat, Daniel saw that her face was calm, but her hands were clenched. "Where to, Ms. Morrow?" he asked gently. For a long second, Elena looked at the house through the rain-blurred glass, the penthouse. Daniel nodded, "And tomorrow." Elena opened the folder Marcus had given her. Inside were divorce papers that his lawyer had prepared with an arrogance so careless it was almost impressive. Marcus had requested the marital home, half of Elena's known liquid assets, which he believed were modest, a confidentiality clause preventing her from discussing his affair publicly, no admission of wrongdoing, no spousal support for her, of course, because Marcus insisted she was capable of finding simple employment. Elena read all of it without expression. Then she looked at Daniel through the rearview mirror. "Tomorrow," she said, "we go to Zenith." At the lawyer's office the next afternoon, Marcus expected defeat. He had dressed for victory, navy suit, silver cufflinks, expensive shoes polished to a mirror shine. Vanessa arrived with him, though she had no legal reason to be there. She said she wanted to support him. In truth, she wanted to witness Elena's humiliation. Elena entered alone. She wore a grey coat, carried the same worn handbag Marcus despised, and greeted everyone politely. Marcus's lawyer, Arthur Penn, barely stood when she entered. He treated her with the bored patience of a man who thought the outcome had already been purchased. "Elena," Marcus said, leaning back, "let's not drag this out." "I agree," she replied. Arthur pushed the papers forward. "As discussed, Mrs. Vale, the terms are straightforward." Elena scanned the pages. Vanessa crossed one leg over the other. "You can ask questions if you don't understand." Elena did not look at her. "I understand perfectly." Marcus laughed then, loud enough that the receptionist outside glanced through the glass wall. "There it is," he said. "That's what I always liked about you, Elena. You knew when to stop fighting." She picked up the pen. For a moment, Arthur Penn's smile widened. Marcus squeezed Vanessa's hand under the table. Elena signed every page. Marcus signed after her with theatrical speed, then slid the papers back as if throwing down a winning hand. "Done," he said. "Freedom." Vanessa giggled. Elena placed the pen neatly on the table. "Not quite." Arthur looked up. "Excuse me." "I said not quite." Elena reached into her handbag and removed a second folder. It was black, embossed with nothing. "You'll receive amended disclosures by morning." Marcus snorted. "Disclosures? Elena, you don't have anything to disclose." She stood. "That is one of many things you are wrong about." Vanessa tilted her head. "Is that supposed to scare us?" Elena finally looked at her. "No, it's supposed to prepare you." The room quieted. For the first time all day, something uneasy moved behind Marcus's eyes. But Vanessa squeezed his arm and smiled, so he found his arrogance again. "You always had a flair for sad little exits," Marcus said. Elena buttoned her coat, "and you always mistook exits for endings." Then she left. By sunrise, Zenith Global's executive floor had already received instructions. At 5:15 a.m., Elena's chief of staff, Miriam Velez, sent encrypted notices to 12 board members, 4 division presidents, legal counsel, compliance leadership, internal audit, and the head of human resources. At 5:40 a.m., the private elevators at Zenith headquarters were locked to standard employee access. At 6:10 a.m., security teams were repositioned at every major entrance. At 6:45 a.m., Vanessa Cruz arrived wearing a red dress and sunglasses despite the cloudy morning. She swept into the lobby as usual, holding her coffee and phone, expecting receptionists to greet her with nervous smiles. Instead, the lobby was tense. Security officers stood near the marble columns. Executives who normally arrived closer to 9 were already there, speaking in hushed tones. A cluster of employees had gathered near the glass entrance, staring outside. Vanessa removed her sunglasses. "What's going on?" No one answered. Then the first Rolls Royce appeared. It was black, long, silent, and polished like obsidian. It pulled to the curb in front of Zenith's main entrance. Then another came behind it. Then another. By the time the fifth car arrived, traffic on the avenue had slowed to a crawl. Phones lifted. Employees pressed closer to the windows. Vanessa's stomach tightened. The doors opened in sequence. Men and women in dark suits stepped out first. Security, legal, senior advisors. A chauffeur moved to the central car and opened the rear door. Elena emerged. Not Marcus's Elena in the faded cardigan, not the woman who carried grocery bags and listened patiently while he bragged about deals he barely understood. This Elena wore an ivory suit tailored with quiet perfection. Her hair was pinned back. Diamonds, small but unmistakable, flashed at her ears. Her face held no triumph, no rage, no performance. That was what frightened Vanessa most. Elena looked like a woman arriving not to fight, but to sign. Miriam Velez stepped to her side with a tablet. "Good morning, Ms. Morrow." The lobby went still. Vanessa heard the name as if from underwater. Morrow. People at Zenith knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Adrian Morrow's portrait hung on the 48th floor. The founder, the architect, the man who had turned Zenith Global into one of the most valuable private companies in the world. But Adrian's daughter was almost mythical, a rumor, a hidden heiress. Some said she lived in Switzerland, some said she was ill, some said she had no interest in the company and left everything to trustees. Vanessa stared as Elena walked through the glass doors. The security officers bowed their heads slightly. The receptionist stood so fast her chair rolled backward. "Good morning, Ms. Morrow," she whispered. Elena smiled kindly at her. "Good morning, Claire. How is your son's recovery?" The receptionist's eyes filled. "Much better, thank you for asking." Vanessa's coffee trembled in her hand. Elena knew the receptionist's son. Miriam turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Cruz, please accompany us to conference room 1. Vanessa straightened, instinctively reaching for attitude like armor. "I have a meeting at 9. Elena walked past her toward the private elevators. "It has been cancelled." Vanessa forced a laugh. "By whom?" The elevator doors opened. Elena stepped inside, then turned. "By me." On the 48th floor, conference room 1 overlooked the city from walls of glass. The board table was long enough to make powerful people feel small if they sat at the wrong end. That morning, it was full. Vanessa entered behind Miriam and found herself facing more senior executives than she had ever managed to gather in one room. The CEO, Nathaniel Brooks, sat stiffly near the head of the table. The general counsel, Priya Shah, had a stack of documents in front of her. The head of HR refused to meet Vanessa's eyes. Elena took the chair at the head of the table. Not beside it. Not near it. At it. Vanessa remained standing. "I don't understand what this is." Elena folded her hands. "That will change." Miriam tapped her tablet, and the glass wall behind Elena shifted into a screen. Vanessa saw her own name appear. Vanessa Cruz. Brand Strategy Division. Internal Review. Her throat went dry. Priya Shah spoke first. "Ms. Cruz, this meeting concerns violations of Zenith Global's employee conduct policies, misuse of corporate resources, falsification of expense reports, coercive behavior toward junior staff, and reputational risk connected to undisclosed conflicts of interest." Vanessa blinked. "That's ridiculous." Elena said nothing. Priya continued. "You used company funds for private travel on 4 occasions. You submitted luxury dining expenses under client development codes for meetings that did not include clients. You pressured 2 junior employees to sign off on false campaign performance data. You also represented yourself externally as having authority you do not possess. Vanessa's face flushed. Everyone does expenses creatively. Nathaniel Brooks winced. Elena's eyes moved to him for half a second, and that tiny glance made him sit straighter. No, Priya said, everyone does not. Vanessa looked around the room for sympathy and found none. Her confidence began to crack, but then she remembered Marcus. Marcus knew investors, Marcus knew lawyers, Marcus would not let Elena, of all people, do this to her. She lifted her chin. This is personal. Elena finally spoke. Yes. The word landed hard. Vanessa seized on it. So you admit it? I admit, Elena said, that when a senior employee of my company participates in the public humiliation of my marriage while abusing her position inside my organization, I take it personally. I also take fraud personally. I take intimidation personally. I take dishonesty personally. Conveniently, in your case, they all arrived together. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came. Elena nodded to Miriam. A second file appeared on the screen. Emails, expense approvals, messages Vanessa had sent from company devices. A photo of her at the lawyer's office with Marcus, posted briefly to a private social account with the caption, "Out with the old, in with the empire." The room was silent. Vanessa whispered, "That was private." Priya Shah replied, "It was stored on a company phone." Vanessa turned to Elena, panic now visible. "You can't fire me because of Marcus." Elena's expression did not change. "I am not firing you because of Marcus. I am firing you because you are unfit to represent Zenith Global." The HR director slid an envelope across the table. "Effective immediately," Elena said. "Your employment is terminated for cause. Your access has been revoked. Your company devices will be surrendered before you leave this floor. Legal will pursue recovery of misused funds. You are not to contact any Zenith employee except through counsel." Vanessa stared at the envelope. For a moment, no one moved. Then Vanessa did the only thing left to her. She reached for cruelty. "You think this makes you better than me?" she snapped. "You hid who you were from your own husband. Maybe he cheated because he wanted a woman who was honest." Elena stood. The room seemed to shrink around her. "No, Vanessa," she said quietly. "Marcus cheated because he wanted applause without accountability. You gave him applause. Now you may share the accountability." Vanessa's eyes filled with furious tears. "Marcus will destroy you." A few people at the table looked down. Elena walked toward her slowly. "Marcus could not destroy a marriage without your help. Do not confuse that with the ability to destroy me." Security entered. Vanessa looked toward Nathaniel Brooks. "Are you seriously allowing this?" Nathaniel swallowed. "Ms. Morrow is the controlling owner of Zenith Global." The sentence finished what the fleet of Rolls Royces had begun. Vanessa went pale. Elena returned to her seat. "Please escort Ms. Cruz out with dignity if she chooses to keep any." Vanessa did not keep much. She shouted in the hallway. She called Elena jealous, bitter, cruel. She threatened lawsuits, media exposure, and Marcus's influence. But every executive door remained closed. Employees watched through glass partitions as security walked her to the elevator. By the time Vanessa reached the lobby, people had already heard. Her access badge failed at the turnstile. The tiny red light blinked like a final insult. Outside, reporters were gathering, not because Elena had called them, but because 5 Rolls Royces in front of Zenith Global had a way of making the city curious. Vanessa pushed through the doors with sunglasses back on, but her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her phone. She called Marcus. He answered on the 3rd ring, still sleepy. "Babes," he murmured, "what's wrong?" Vanessa's voice broke. "Your wife is Elena Morrow." Silence. Then Marcus laughed. "What? She owns Zenith, Vanessa hissed. She owns the company, she fired me. She had files, Marcus, emails, expenses, everything. Marcus sat up in bed. He was in the house, Elena's house. Vanessa's overnight bag was open on the chair. Her perfume sat on Elena's vanity. The divorce papers were in his briefcase downstairs, signed and waiting to be filed. What do you mean she owns Zenith? He demanded. I mean she's the billionaire, the secret one, Adrian Morau's daughter, controlling owner, everyone knew except us. Marcus's mind rejected the information at first. Elena. His Elena. The woman he had mocked for clipping coupons, though she only did it because she disliked waste. The woman who wore old sweaters at home because she found them comfortable. The woman who had once sold a necklace, or so he thought, to help him cover a failed investment, when in reality she must have been quietly protecting his pride. No. Impossible. Elena doesn't own anything, he said, but his voice had lost force. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Tell that to the security guards who just walked me out. The line went dead. Marcus sat motionless. Then he ran downstairs. The house staff was gathered in the kitchen, speaking in low voices. When Marcus entered, they stopped. Where is Elena's office key? He demanded. The housekeeper, Anna, looked at him with an expression he had never seen from her before. Not fear, not obedience. Disgust. Mrs. Vale's private study is not available to you. Marcus stared. This is my house. Anna said nothing. A man stepped into the kitchen behind her, Daniel Cross. Marcus frowned. Who are you? Daniel held up an envelope. Mr. Vale, you are required to vacate the property by noon. Marcus barked a laugh. Excuse me. The residence is owned by the Morau family trust. Your temporary occupancy was connected to your marriage. That arrangement has been terminated. Marcus snatched the envelope and tore it open. Legal language blurred in front of him. Trust, occupancy, revocation, personal property inventory, security supervision. His face darkened. You can't throw me out of my own home. Daniel's voice remained even. It is not your home. Marcus looked at the staff. You're all going along with this. Anna folded her hands. We work for Mrs. Vale. Morau, Daniel corrected gently. Anna nodded. Mrs. Morau. Something hot and humiliating rose in Marcus's chest. He called his lawyer. Arthur Penn answered quickly, all confidence. Marcus, I was just about to call. There seems to be some unusual activity from your wife's side. Did you know? Marcus shouted. Know what? That she's Elena Morau. Arthur went quiet. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. Arthur. I'm reviewing the disclosures now. You said she had nothing. You told me she had nothing. You're my lawyer. And you provided false or incomplete information. Marcus nearly threw the phone. Fix it. Arthur exhaled. This is complicated. No, it's not. Undo the divorce papers. The papers are signed. She tricked me. Arthur's tone sharpened. Did she lie on the disclosures you reviewed? Marcus hesitated. He hadn't reviewed anything Elena gave him. He hadn't asked. He had assumed. Arthur continued, more slowly now. Marcus, her premarital assets appear to be protected by multiple trusts, holding companies, and agreements that predate your marriage. The house is not marital property. The accounts we listed were based on your representations and the documents available to us. If her legal team submits full amended disclosures, and if those disclosures show everything was separate property. Stop talking like that, Marcus snapped. Like what? Like I lost. Arthur did not answer. Marcus ended the call. For several minutes, he stood in the kitchen of the home he had claimed as his, surrounded by people who had known the truth all along. That realization cut deeper than the legal notice. The driver knew. The housekeeper knew. Maybe the gardener knew. Maybe every person he had looked through, ordered around, or dismissed had known he was a fool playing king in another person's castle. His phone buzzed. A message from an investor he had been courting for months. Marcus heard there may be complications involving Zenith. We should pause discussions until things are clearer. Then another. Given recent concerns, our lunch is cancelled. Then another. Call me immediately. What did you do to Elena Morau? By 10:30 a.m., Marcus understood that news did not need a newspaper to travel. In certain circles, it moved through calls, whispers, and doors quietly closing. At 11:15, his bank relationship manager called to inform him that a pending credit extension would be delayed pending review. At 11:40, a luxury club where he had been seeking membership withdrew his application. At 12:03, Daniel cross-watched Marcus carry 2 suitcases down the front steps. The rain had stopped. The sky was hard and bright. Marcus turned at the gate. Tell Elena this isn't over. Daniel's expression did not move. Ms. Morau is unavailable. Marcus climbed into a hired car, not a Rolls Royce, not a sedan with a driver who knew his name, just a black car ordered in panic from an app he had once mocked. As it pulled away, he looked back at the house. For the first time, he saw it clearly. It had never belonged to him. Neither had the woman inside it. At Zenith headquarters, Elena spent the afternoon doing what Marcus had never imagined she did, working. Not posing, not inheriting in some lazy, decorative way, working. She led a board session on the hospitality division's restructuring, reviewed compliance exposure from Vanessa's misconduct, approved a fund allocation for employee education grants, and personally called 2 junior staff members who had been pressured by Vanessa to alter campaign data. One of them, a young analyst named Priya, not the general counsel, but a nervous 24-year-old in marketing, cried on the phone. I thought I was going to be fired, the analyst said. Ms. Cruz said if I didn't adjust the numbers, she'd ruin my references. Elena's voice softened. You are not being fired. You did the right thing by documenting everything. I didn't know anyone would believe me. I believe evidence, Elena said, and I believe people who are afraid but tell the truth anyway. After the call, Miriam entered with tea. You haven't eaten, Miriam said. I had breakfast. You had coffee. That counts in hostile situations. Miriam gave her a look. She was in her 50s, precise, loyal, and one of the few people who could scold Elena without fear. She had known Elena since she was 22 and still attending board meetings from the back row, while men twice her age tried to explain her own company to her. Elena accepted the tea. Thank you. Miriam sat across from her. Marcus has been removed from the house. Elena nodded. His lawyer requested a call. No. Vanessa's lawyer sent a notice threatening wrongful termination. Expected. The press is asking whether you'll make a statement. No. Miriam smiled faintly, also expected. Elena looked out at the city. Far below, traffic moved like glittering threads. Miriam's voice gentled. Are you all right? For the first time that day, Elena's face changed. Only a little. The mask slipped, and beneath it was not a billionaire, not a strategist, not a woman who could move markets with a signature. Beneath it was a wife who had stood in the rain with a suitcase, while the man she loved laughed. No, Elena said, but I will be. Miriam reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That evening, Marcus checked into a hotel under his own name and discovered humiliation had followed him there. The receptionist's smile faltered when she saw his ID. The manager appeared without being called. His suite was unavailable due to maintenance, though he could see the booking on his phone. They offered him a smaller room on a lower floor with apologies so polished they could not hide the refusal beneath them. He took it. Vanessa arrived an hour later, furious and frightened. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were swollen. "This is your fault," she said before the door fully opened. Marcus stared. "My fault? You told me she was nobody." "She never told me she was somebody." Vanessa threw her bag onto the bed. "Do you understand what this does to me? Fired for cause from Zenith. I'll never get hired at that level again." Marcus poured himself a drink from the minibar with shaking hands. "We'll fight it." "With what money?" He turned. "Don't start." "No, let's start." Vanessa stepped closer. "How much do you actually have?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Enough." How much without her house, her staff, her accounts, her invisible little safety nets? He said nothing. Vanessa laughed, but there was panic in it. "Oh my God." Marcus pointed at her. "You don't get to blame me. You loved this. You loved sitting in that lawyer's office." "Because I thought we were winning." "So did I." The silence after that was brutal. Both of them heard what Marcus had said. Not because he loved Vanessa, not because he wanted truth, not because his marriage had truly been unbearable. Because he thought they were winning. Vanessa sank onto the bed. "What do we do?" Marcus looked at the city lights beyond the cheap hotel window and tried to summon the old confidence. "Elena still loved me yesterday," he said. Vanessa looked up sharply. "What?" "She did. I know her. She's hurt. That's why she did all this." Vanessa's face hardened. "You are not going back to her." Marcus did not answer quickly enough. She stood. "Marcus, I'm saying I can talk to her. She fired me. You committed fraud." Vanessa slapped him. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to strip the room of its last illusion. Marcus touched his cheek slowly. Vanessa grabbed her bag. "Fix it, or we're done." She left. Marcus stood alone in the room, the tiny bottle of whiskey still in his hand, and realized that even his mistress had loved the version of him who belonged beside power. Without Elena's invisible world around him, he was just a man in a small hotel room with a bruise on his pride and a minibar bill he suddenly cared about. The next morning, he went to Zenith. He dressed carefully, though the suit looked wrong after a sleepless night. He rehearsed explanations in the car. "Elena, I made a mistake." "No, too weak." "Elena, you deceived me first." "No, too aggressive." "Elena, we both hurt each other." That sounded balanced, mature, useful. By the time he reached Zenith headquarters, he had convinced himself that if he could get into a room with her, he could fix enough of the damage to survive. The lobby stopped him. A security officer stepped forward. "Mr. Vale, you do not have clearance." Marcus forced a smile. "I'm here to see my wife." "Ms. Morrow is unavailable." "She'll see me." "No, sir." Marcus looked past him to the reception desk. Claire, the receptionist Elena had asked about, kept her eyes on her screen. "Tell her I'm here," Marcus said loudly. The security officer remained still. "Ms. Morrow has instructed that all communication go through counsel." Marcus's smile cracked. "Do you know who I am?" The guard's expression did not change. "Yes, sir." That was worse. People in the lobby were looking now. A few recognized him from whispers, maybe from Vanessa's quickly deleted post, maybe from the kind of private gossip that turns public the moment a powerful woman decides not to protect a foolish man anymore. Marcus lowered his voice. "I need 5 minutes." "No. I am her husband." "Not for long," someone muttered. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the lobby. Marcus turned, face burning. "Who said that?" No one answered. Above them, on the mezzanine level, Elena appeared behind the glass railing. She had not come down. She did not need to. Marcus saw her and stepped around the guard, Elena. Security moved instantly, blocking him. "Elena, please," he shouted. "We need to talk." Every eye in the lobby lifted. Elena looked down at him, calm as winter sunlight. For 1 second, Marcus saw the woman he had married, not in her clothes or posture, but in the sadness behind her eyes. It gave him hope. "Elena," he said, softer now, "please." She turned to Miriam beside her and said something Marcus could not hear. Miriam nodded. A moment later, Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mr. Vale, Ms. Mora will meet you at 4:00 p.m. today at Shah and Bell legal offices. All discussion will be recorded. Counsel will be present." Marcus stared at the message. Not here. Not privately. Not as husband and wife. On her terms. Still, it was a meeting. He looked back up, but Elena was already gone. At 4:00 p.m., Marcus arrived at Shah and Bell, a law firm so discreet it did not need a sign on the building. The conference room was smaller than the one at Zenith, but colder in atmosphere. Priya Shah sat on one side with 2 associates. Arthur Penn sat beside Marcus, looking as if he wished he had chosen a different profession. Elena entered at 4:02. Marcus stood. "Elena." She did not sit immediately. "Mr. Vale." The formality struck him like a slap. "Can we not do that?" he said. "It is accurate." Arthur cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should begin." Elena sat. Marcus leaned forward. "I want to apologize." No one spoke. He had expected some reaction, a softening, a blink, something. "I was angry," he continued. "Confused. Vanessa manipulated things, she made me believe." Elena lifted a hand. Marcus stopped. "Do not insult me by making her responsible for your choices." His jaw worked. "I'm trying to take responsibility." "No," Elena said. "You are trying to relocate blame." Arthur murmured, "Marcus." Marcus swallowed. "Fine, I made mistakes." Elena's gaze remained steady. "A mistake is missing a meeting. You conducted an affair in our marriage, moved your mistress into my home, threw me out in the rain, laughed while signing divorce papers, and attempted to take property you had no right to claim." The words were not shouted. That made them worse. Marcus looked at the table. "I didn't know that I was wealthy." "Yes." Elena leaned back slightly. "Would you have treated me better if you had?" His head lifted. "Of course." Arthur closed his eyes. Priya Shah's pen paused. Elena's expression did not change, but something in the room did. Even Marcus heard the answer after it left his mouth. "Of course." Not because she was his wife. Not because she loved him. Not because vows meant anything. Because money would have made him behave. Elena nodded once, as if he had confirmed a document she already held. "Thank you for your honesty." Marcus panicked. That came out wrong. It came out clearly. He reached toward her hand across the table. She moved hers before he touched it. "Elena," he whispered, "I loved you." She looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said, "you loved being loved by me. There is a difference." His face tightened. "You lied to me for 7 years. I protected myself for 7 years. From your husband. From exactly what you became." Arthur shifted uncomfortably. Marcus felt cornered, and cornered pride often chooses attack. "You think you're innocent," he snapped. "You sat there watching me struggle when you could have helped. You let me embarrass myself." Elena's eyes sharpened. "I paid off your first failed investment through a bridge loan you thought came from a friendly lender. I introduced you anonymously to 2 clients who saved your firm. I covered your mother's medical expenses when your insurance lapsed, because you were too proud to tell anyone. I made sure your brother got into a rehabilitation program after you told him to handle himself like a man." I protected you from embarrassment so many times that you confused my care with your competence." Marcus went still. Arthur turned to him slowly. "You didn't know?" Arthur asked. Marcus could not speak. Elena opened the folder in front of her. "I am not here to punish you for not knowing I was rich. I am here to end the pattern of you benefiting from my protection while degrading the person providing it." She slid a document across the table. Marcus did not touch it. "What is that?" "A settlement offer." Arthur picked it up first. His eyes moved quickly over the page. Relief flickered across his face, then caution. "It's fair," Arthur said quietly. Marcus grabbed it. Elena was offering no claim against him for damage to the home, no pursuit of certain personal expenses charged during the marriage, no public statement about the affair unless he or Vanessa made one first, and a clean dissolution of the marriage, according to the prenuptial agreement he had barely remembered signing. In return, Marcus would leave with what was legally his. Not what he imagined was his. Not what he had bragged was his. Just his. His investments reduced by debts. His personal accounts. His clothes, watches, and cars purchased independently. No house. No Moro assets. No Zenith connections. No confidential information. And a strict non-disparagement clause with penalties large enough to bankrupt him twice. "This is nothing," Marcus said. Elena's voice was even. "No, that is what you built without me." The sentence crushed him. Because it was true. Marcus had spent years believing he was climbing. Now, stripped of Elena's hidden scaffolding, he saw he had barely reached the first ledge. He lowered his voice. "Please don't do this. There is nothing left to do. I already did the difficult part." "What difficult part?" "Letting you show me who you are." He looked at her then, really looked at her. She seemed older than yesterday, though not weaker. There was grief in her, but it had hardened into clarity. Marcus realized he was not negotiating with an angry wife. He was negotiating with a woman who had already buried the version of him she loved. That was why she was calm. He signed. Not laughing this time. The fallout unfolded over the next 3 weeks with the cold efficiency of winter. Vanessa filed a complaint against Zenith Global. Zenith responded with documentation so thorough her attorney recommended withdrawal within 5 days. She tried to contact former colleagues, but most ignored her. One junior employee filed a formal complaint of workplace intimidation. Then another. Then a vendor came forward about falsified performance reports. Vanessa's glamorous career did not explode. It deflated. Invitations vanished. Recruiters stopped returning calls. The circles that once admired her sharpness now called it instability. She blamed Elena, then Marcus, then everyone except herself. Marcus fared no better. His investors did not want scandal. Worse, they did not want to offend Elena Moro. No one said he was blacklisted. People like that rarely say the word. They simply became unavailable. Calls went unanswered. Lunches were postponed indefinitely. Partnerships required additional review. Membership committees expressed regret. Within a month, Marcus had sold 1 car. Within 2, he had moved from the hotel into a serviced apartment with furniture that looked stylish online and cheap in person. Within 3, Vanessa was gone. She left him a voice message at 1:13 a.m. "You ruined my life, Marcus, don't call me." He listened to it 3 times, then deleted it. The silence afterward was worse than her anger. He began writing messages to Elena and not sending them. The first drafts were defensive. "You should have told me." Then dramatic. "I don't know who I am without you." Then desperate. "Please, I need help." He sent none of them until the day his bank froze a business line connected to an investigation into overstated collateral. It was not criminal yet, Arthur said, but it was serious. Serious enough that Marcus understood he might not simply be humbled, he might be ruined. He went to Elena's penthouse. He should not have known where it was, but Marcus had remembered an address once printed on a delivery slip years ago. At the time, Elena had said it belonged to a family office. He had not cared enough to ask more. The building rose above the river, all glass and stone and impossible quiet. The doorman listened politely as Marcus gave his name, then made a call. "She is not receiving visitors," the doorman said. "Tell her it's urgent." "I did." Marcus stepped back, staring up at the tower. For a moment he considered making a scene, shouting, refusing to leave. But there was a security camera above him and 2 guards inside the lobby and some final piece of dignity begging not to be sacrificed. He walked away. Halfway down the block, his phone rang. "Elena." He answered so fast, he nearly dropped it. "Elena." Her voice came through calm and distant. "Do not come to my home again." He stopped walking. "Please don't hang up. You have 30 seconds. I'm in trouble." "I know." Of course she knew. "Elena, I need help. Not money," he said quickly, though money was exactly part of what he needed. "Advice, a contact, something. Everyone shut me out." "No one shut you out without reason. I'm being treated like a criminal." "Are you innocent?" Marcus closed his eyes. There it was again, that unbearable precision. "I exaggerated some numbers," he said. "Everyone does it." "No," Elena replied, "everyone does not." The words echoed Vanessa's termination meeting, though Marcus did not know that. He leaned against a wall, suddenly exhausted. "I'm scared." For the first time, Elena said nothing. That silence made him speak honestly. "I am scared," he repeated, "and I know I deserve some of this, maybe most of it, but I don't know how to stop it." Elena's voice softened by 1 degree. "Tell the truth." He laughed bitterly. "That's your advice?" "Yes. That'll destroy me." "No, Marcus, lies built the version of you that is collapsing. Truth is what remains after." He swallowed. "I miss you," he whispered. "I miss who I thought you were." That hurt more than accusation. "Elena." "You need a lawyer who specializes in financial disclosures. Arthur Penn is out of his depth. I will have Miriam send 3 names. I will not call them. I will not influence them. Choose one and be honest with them." Hope flared. Thank you, Elena. This is not reconciliation." "I know. I am helping because I once loved you, and because letting you become worse helps no one. But after this, you are not to contact me directly." His throat tightened. "So that's it. That was it the day you laughed." The line ended. Marcus stood on the sidewalk with the city moving around him, holding the phone to his ear long after she was gone. He did hire one of the lawyers Miriam sent. Her name was Sophia Calder, and she was terrifying in the way honest professionals can be terrifying to men who prefer fog. In their first meeting, she read his documents for 20 minutes without speaking. Then she said, "You have 2 choices." Marcus braced himself. 1. Continue pretending you are misunderstood and lose everything. 2. Disclose every misrepresentation, cooperate, settle where possible, and rebuild smaller. "Smaller," Marcus repeated. "Yes. I don't know how to be smaller." Sophia looked at him over her glasses. "That is not a legal problem." For once, Marcus had no clever reply. The process was humiliating. He sold assets. He admitted exaggerations. He settled debts. He issued corrected statements to investors. Some people threatened suits. Some accepted repayment plans. Some simply cut him off forever. Every signature felt like another layer of false skin being peeled away. 6 months after the divorce, Marcus saw Elena again. Not in a boardroom, not in court, not outside a glass tower. At a charity gala for the Morale Foundation's Youth Education Initiative. Marcus had not been invited as a guest. He was there because Sophia Calder had insisted he attend as part of a public restitution agreement connected to one of his investment misrepresentations. He was not on stage. He was not at a front table. He was not photographed. He stood near the back, wearing a simple black suit he owned outright, watching Elena speak to a room full of donors, teachers, students, and executives. She looked different from the woman in the lawyer's office and different from the woman at Zenith. Less armored, still elegant, still powerful, but warmer. When a young scholarship recipient stumbled over her words while introducing her, Elena stepped forward and held the girl's note cards until her hands stopped shaking. The room loved her. Not because she was rich. Because she was attentive. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He had lived beside that attention for years and called it ordinary. Elena took the podium. My father believed companies are judged not by the wealth they create, but by the lives they strengthen, she said. I used to think that was too idealistic. Then I learned that power without service becomes vanity, and service without courage becomes silence. So tonight, we choose courage. Applause filled the room. Marcus did not clap at first. He couldn't. His hands felt heavy. Then he did. Elena's eyes swept the room once, and for a fraction of a second they met his. There was no hatred in her face. That almost broke him. Hatred would have given him something to push against. Her peace left him alone with himself. After the speech, he stayed near the exit, unsure whether to approach. He decided not to. That was new. The old Marcus would have turned her public grace into a private opportunity. He would have stepped into her path, lowered his voice, and tried to make the moment about him. Instead, he turned to leave. Elena saw you, Miriam said behind him. Marcus turned. Miriam stood with a glass of sparkling water, watching him like a customs officer deciding whether to let contraband pass. I wasn't going to bother her, Marcus said. I know, that is why I came over. He almost smiled, fair. Miriam stuttered him, you look tired. I am. Good, some lessons should be exhausting. He nodded, she was brilliant tonight. She usually is. I didn't see it. No, Miriam said, you didn't. The words held no cruelty, just fact. Marcus looked toward Elena across the room. She was speaking with a group of students now, leaning slightly so a shy boy could be heard over the music. I loved her badly, he said. Miriam followed his gaze. That may be the first true thing I've heard you say. He deserved that. Can you tell her? He stopped. Miriam waited. Marcus shook his head. No, don't tell her anything. She doesn't owe me the burden of my regret. Miriam's expression shifted, almost approving. Good night, Marcus. Good night. He left the gala alone. 1 year after the morning the Rolls Royces arrived at Zenith Global, the divorce was finalized. It happened quietly. No photographers, no shouting, no mistress laughing in the corner, just documents, signatures, and the strange silence that follows the legal ending of something that ended emotionally long before. Elena signed first. Marcus signed after. When it was done, Arthur Penn, no longer Marcus's lawyer but present for procedural reasons, gathered his papers and left quickly. Priya Shah gave Elena a brief nod and stepped out to take a call. For the first time in a year, Marcus and Elena were alone in a room. Not entirely alone. Glass walls, assistants nearby, the world waiting, but alone enough. Marcus stood with his hands in his pockets. Congratulations feels wrong. Elena looked at the signed decree. Yes. I'm sorry felt too small, but he said it anyway. I'm sorry. She looked up. He did not add excuses. That was important, maybe the only important thing left. I know, she said. He nodded, accepting that knowing was not forgiving, and forgiving would not mean returning. I'm moving, he said, to Portland. Sophia knows a firm there, smaller market, real work, no investor games. That sounds wise. I'm trying to be honest. For yourself, I hope, not for me. For myself, he said, then after a pause, because of you at first, but for myself now. Elena studied him, perhaps searching for performance. He let her look. He had no performance prepared. I hope you become someone you can live with, she said. His throat tightened. I hope you're happy. I am becoming happy, Elena replied. That answer was so like her, precise, honest, unrushed. Marcus gave a small nod. Goodbye, Elena. Goodbye, Marcus. He walked to the door. Before he opened it, he turned back once, not to plead, not to ask, just to remember correctly. She stood by the window, sunlight catching the edge of her face, no longer his wife, no longer his safety net, no longer the quiet woman he had mistaken for small. Elena Mora was exactly who she had always been. He had simply been too blind to see her. After Marcus left, Elena remained in the conference room for several minutes. Priya returned and paused at the doorway. Are you ready? Elena looked at the decree one last time. For years she had thought love meant patience, then patience had become endurance, endurance had become silence, silence had become permission for Marcus to become cruel without consequence. She would not confuse those things again. Yes, Elena said, I'm ready. The weeks that followed were not dramatic, and that was their gift. Elena returned to work, but differently. She delegated more. She stopped hiding from every camera, though she still refused to become a celebrity. She moved through Zenith Global with a visibility that changed the company from the inside. Employees who had known her only as a rumor now saw her in cafeterias, elevators, town halls, and factory floors. She asked questions that made executives nervous and interns feel important. She created a direct ethics channel outside divisional management. She expanded scholarships for employees' families. She ordered a full audit of workplace culture, not because it sounded good in a press release, but because Vanessa had not been an accident. People like Vanessa grew where fear went unchallenged. One afternoon, months later, Elena visited the hospitality division Vanessa had once haunted like perfume in a closed room. A junior manager gave a presentation on a campaign Vanessa had tried to falsify. The numbers were modest but real. The projections were cautious but honest. When he finished, he looked braced for criticism. Elena smiled. This is excellent. He blinked. The growth is only 3%. Only honest growth compounds, Elena said. False growth explodes. The team laughed nervously, then with relief. Afterward, as Elena walked back to the elevator, Miriam handed her a tablet. Press request, Miriam said. They want a profile. No. You didn't let me finish. I sensed the ending. Miriam smiled. They're framing it as the secret billionaire who took back her empire. Elena groaned softly. That sounds like a perfume ad. It would sell. I'm sure Vanessa would buy it. Miriam laughed, then caught herself. Elena laughed too, surprising them both. It felt good. Not cruel, not victorious. Just free. That evening, Elena went to the old house for the first time since Marcus had been removed. She had avoided it for months, allowing staff to maintain it while she decided whether to sell. The rooms still held memories, but memories had begun to lose their teeth. Anna opened the door, eyes warm. Welcome home, Ms. Mora. Elena stepped inside. The foyer was quiet. No Vanessa in a cream coat, no Marcus with a folder, no suitcase waiting like an accusation. Just marble floors, flowers on the table, and rain tapping gently against the windows. Elena walked room by room. In the kitchen. She remembered making soup when Marcus had the flu during their second year of marriage. He had held her hand and said he didn't deserve her. At the time, she thought it was tenderness. Later, she wondered if it had been prophecy. In the library, she remembered him practicing a business pitch while she sat on the floor with documents for a billion-dollar acquisition hidden inside a cookbook, because he had never thought to ask what she was reading. In the bedroom, she saw the vanity where Vanessa had left perfume. Elena had replaced it. Not with something expensive, with a small vase of white tulips. She stood there for a while, waiting to feel anger. Instead, she felt release. Anna appeared quietly in the doorway. "Will you keep the house?" Elena looked around. "No," she said, "not as it is." Anna nodded. "Sell." Elena thought about the size of it, the gardens, the empty guest rooms, the long driveway that had once carried her away in the rain. Then she thought of the Foundation's housing initiative for young women agging out of foster care, a project delayed for months while they searched for the right property. "No," Elena said again, but this time she smiled. "Convert it." Anna's eyes widened. "Into what?" "A residence, education support, counseling rooms, gardens, safety. A place for girls who need somewhere to go before the world convinces them they have nowhere." Anna's hand went to her mouth. "Your father would love that." Elena touched the banister. "I think my mother would too." 6 months later, the house reopened as Morrow House. The marble foyer where Marcus had thrown Elena out became a welcome hall filled with sunlight and student art. The library became a tutoring center. The formal dining room became a communal kitchen where residents learned cooking, budgeting, and the kind of ordinary skills that are not ordinary when no one has cared enough to teach them. Elena attended the opening without cameras. A 17-year-old resident named Leela stood beside her in the garden, staring at the building. "You used to live here?" Leela asked. "Yes." "Was it happy?" Elena considered lying gently, then chose truth. "Sometimes." Leela nodded, accepting the complexity with the wisdom of someone too young to have needed it. Why give it away? Elena looked at the house, because a place that witnessed pain should not be wasted on memory when it can become shelter. Leela thought about that. That's kind of epic. Elena smiled. "I'll take that." Life did not become perfect, it became honest. There were still nights Elena woke from dreams of rain. There were still interviews she refused, board battles she had to win, legal matters from Vanessa's misconduct that dragged on longer than they should have. There were still moments when grief arrived unexpectedly, not for Marcus as he had become, but for the young man in the rain years ago who had bought her coffee and looked at her like she was enough. But grief, Elena learned, was not a command to return. It was proof that something had mattered, even if it could not be saved. Marcus in Portland became smaller. At first he hated it. He hated commercial office parks, modest clients, and meetings where no one cared about his watch. He hated flying economy. He hated renting an apartment with a view of another apartment. He hated that honesty did not impress people as quickly as charm. Then, slowly, he discovered the strange relief of not performing wealth he did not have. The firm Sophia connected him with specialized in restructuring small family businesses. His first client was a bakery drowning in debt after the owner's husband died. Marcus nearly dismissed the account as too minor, then he caught himself. Minor to whom? He worked the case carefully. He renegotiated vendor payments, helped sell unused equipment, arranged a realistic repayment plan, and sat with the owner while she cried from exhaustion. "You saved my father's bakery," she said. Marcus almost gave the old answer, "That's what I do." Instead, he said, "You saved it. I just helped organize the numbers." He meant it. That night, walking home in the rain, he thought of Elena. Not as a resource, not as a lost fortune, not as a woman he could win back if he became tragic enough. He thought of her as someone who had tried to teach him that people matter before power. He had learned too late to keep her. But perhaps not too late to become human. 2 years after the divorce, Zenith Global held its annual leadership summit at a restored theater downtown. Elena stood backstage, reviewing notes for her keynote. Miriam adjusted the schedule beside her. "You know," Miriam said, "there was a time when you hated speeches." "I still hate speeches." "You're good at them now." "That makes it worse, people keep asking." Miriam smiled and handed her a card. "This arrived for you." Elena looked down. No return address on the envelope. Inside was a single note, handwritten. "Elena, I heard about Morrow House. I do not deserve to say I am proud of you, so I will say this instead. You were right. A place can become better than what happened inside it. I am sorry for the rain, for the laughter, and for every day I mistook your kindness for something small. I will not write again. Marcus." Elena read it twice. Miriam watched her carefully. "Are you all right?" Elena folded the note and placed it back in the envelope. "Yes. Do you want it thrown away?" Elena thought about that. Then she shook her head. "No, file it." "Where?" Elena smiled faintly, under evidence of growth. Miriam laughed. "That is not a folder." "It should be." The stage manager appeared. "Ms. Morrow, 2 minutes." Elena took a breath. Beyond the curtain, hundreds of employees waited. People who knew her now not as a myth, not as a hidden billionaire, not as a betrayed wife who arrived in Rolls Royces and fired a mistress, but as a leader who remembered names, demanded truth, and turned old wounds into doors other people could walk through. Miriam touched her arm. "Ready." Elena looked toward the light spilling at the edge of the stage. She thought of the lawyer's office, Marcus laughing, Vanessa smiling, the pen in her hand, the fleet of cars, the lobby frozen in shock, the boardroom, the house in the rain, the girls now sleeping safely in rooms where loneliness once echoed. The world had called her revenge ruthless. They had not understood. Revenge was never the point. Revelation was. Marcus had revealed himself. Vanessa had revealed herself. And Elena, at last, had revealed what silence had been protecting all along. She stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. This time she did not lower her eyes. This time she did not hide. And somewhere in the city, in a building that bore her family's name, a young woman who had once believed she had nowhere to go unlocked the door to her own room, placed textbooks on her desk, and looked out at the garden with hope. That was the victory. Not Marcus begging. Not Vanessa fired. Not the blacklist that followed a man who tried to build a life on arrogance and betrayal. The victory was that Elena Morrow had taken the morning after humiliation and turned it into a beginning. She had lost a husband who never truly saw her. Then she found herself in full view of the world. And this time, no one laughed.